Hi everyone. I know it's been a while since my last video with everything going on in the world that's kind of had the whole family in the house here, and it makes it a little bit difficult to get away and find time to record a video. Plus I've been messing around with a lot of different things on my end that I don't know, I haven't had enough success with to feel like I wanted to record a new video about it. But I did have something happen today that I thought would be great to share with everyone. So as some of you may know if you've watched some of my previous videos, I have one particular piece of gear that I use a lot. That is the Pegasus Astro Pocket Powerbox. And I love this thing. It's a really great, simple piece of gear for helping to easily power your equipment without a bunch of extra cables or a whole bunch of things needing to run to a power strip or a battery. And it also has some additional features to control dew heater straps and things like that. It can power a DSLR camera or, Astro cameras, that kind of thing. Even your mount can be powered off of this, all with a single power cord running in. It also has some USB control in here, so you can come in and really adjust the power on the dew heaters manually, or use the temperature sensor that comes with it to do automatic dew control. And so all of that leads to a really nifty little box. It's very light. I just Velcro it on to the top of my telescope, plug everything in off of that, and it's really great. However, I've always been a little annoyed that this does the power really well, but it didn't have the ability to, kind of do a similar thing for all my USB devices. So you do things like having a USB hub as well, and you probably need to get that to be a powered hub. And then, you'd also run across issues of, well, what if you have USB 3 gear versus USB 2? And some of the hubs, like I have a hub that's built in on my telescope mount, is only USB 2. The end result is that I have a lot more cables running around on my scope than I'd really like. So this is a great piece of hardware. I'm not planning on getting rid of it anytime soon. But I think it was actually one of the commenters on one of my videos that let me know the Pegasus Astro is actually coming up with a new piece of gear, their Pocket Powerbox Advance. And so I took a look at it, really liked the idea of it, and ordered it as soon as it was available. It took a few weeks for everything to kind of come in. Everybody's launches and shipments have been delayed, but I finally got it today. So I'm gonna open it and let's take a look at what we got. You've got their little catalog of other stuff and some basic instructions. If I remember correctly, basic instructions almost always tell you to go and download the actual manual and drivers off the site. Let's take a look at the guy itself. So here we go. This is the Pocket Powerbox Advance. So the first thing on it is this is actually a metal enclosure here now, a little bit tougher, a little bit more heavy duty than the plastic box on the Pocket Powerbox. I'd say between the two, this one's definitely heavier, but not crazy so. I don't think it's like double the weight or anything. This would still very easily just take a little bit of double-sided Velcro tape and stick on your scope without a problem. You still have the four 12-volt outputs here with the one in coming in. I like that this is all on one side here. You also have the two dew heater ports. So right here you have pretty close to the full functionality of the Pocket Powerbox. You have this extension port here, which I'll go back through on the instructions when I'm setting it up, but I believe this is for sensors as well as external focuser control, that kind of thing. Then you get to the advanced part, in my opinion, on the back here. And so this is a full USB 3.0 hub on the back, which may not sound like much, but at least as advertised, this is an industrial grade USB 3.0 hub. So hopefully it should be a lot more stable. I've had a lot of problems with like cheap little like Amazon Basics USB hubs, that kind of thing, where, you know, maybe they're kind of working okay at the beginning and then something gets clogged up in it. And they have one additional port here that they call ADJ out. This may very well be this may be adjustable power out, which may work for DSLRs or other things. I'll need to take a look at that. But that's the Pocket Powerbox Advance from a hardware perspective. So now that we've taken a look at the box itself, let's see what other goodies come with it. First thing here is a temperature sensor. So looks like it's slightly different than the sensor that you would use on the old school Powerbox. That temperature sensor literally just plugged in with a little kind of stereo jack kind of deal here. This one is an actual kind of phone style jack. So just like I thought, that goes into the extension port here and clicks in. Now, benefit of that, you know, is that this cable's not going to pull out. It's also very short. If I remember correctly, the other one had a much longer cable, which would allow you to put this in different places. But I actually kind of like this because honestly, I may just end up Velcroing this here if there's a lot of heat on it, or putting it just somewhere right on the scope. So I don't really think I need a long cable for the temperature sensor. Just more cable means more mess, more weight. So I'm happy to not have that. We have our USB 3 cable. It's a little thing, but I like purple, so I think that's pretty cool. Kind of your 12 volt DC adapter here. I tend to run all of my gear when I'm at the house here just off of AC power, so this doesn't have a lot of use for me, but if I remember correctly, the same power adapter that you use for the Pocket Powerbox works just fine for the Advance, so I'm just going to continue using that. And then your power cables. This is one thing that I really like on the Pegasus Astro stuff versus what I've seen on some of the other, you know, makers like Primalucia Lab, right? I love the look and the design of the Primalucia Lab stuff, but it seems like everything they have is a proprietary cable or adapter or something like that. So then you end up having to go and buy the power cables. In my video where I talked about using an Intel NUC as opposed to the Primalucia Lab Eagle, that was one of the things in there. They're good cables, they're set up. I think they're probably worth it in a lot of cases, but it is a little bit of a pain. On the Pegasus Astro stuff, they use the standard, you know, whatever it is, 2.1 or 2.5 millimeter, I forget which one, you know, power adapter ends that all your equipment uses, and it's just, they give it to you. So you get, it looks like it's, yeah, you have 4 cables included with this. So you're talking every one of these ports here filled up. So you shouldn't need any other cables unless you need a different length, right? That kind of thing. So once again, it's a small thing, but the fact that it's just included out of the box lets you know that hopefully you have everything you need included with it, with the exception of if you want a different power adapter. So I encourage more makers to actually put in an AC adapter, or just, you know, have it be a cheaper thing to get. It just seems like a lot of additional bulk and money to be able to plug it in the way that you plug in most other gear. So that's the Pocket Powerbox. That's everything that comes with it. Pretty straightforward, not a super complicated piece of hardware. So why don't we go ahead and plug this guy in and take a look at the software that comes with it from Pegasus Astro. All right, so for kind of the test run here, I'm just setting this up to work on my desktop computer. I plugged in the sensor here, which I should have said before is an environmental sensor. So it's not just temperature, but also humidity. That's how it works off of the, or works the automatic dew control. So I've got that hooked in. I've hooked it into my ZWO ASI 294 camera. You can see it's already lit up. So it is accepting, you know, the power just fine here. So I'm going to test that out on the USB side, make sure we're getting, you know, good power and good connection there. And I have hooked it up with the AC adapter, and you can see this thing is a brick. You know, it's a pretty large device there, and so it does run some extra cash if you don't already have one that's rated for this, but it is worth it in my opinion to not have to carry a battery around everywhere when you've got AC power available. So, as soon as I popped the power in for it, the computer dinged, letting me know that it found something new. So we're going to go ahead and install the drivers for this and take a look. All right, so the first step here is to go and get the software from pegasusastro.com/support. So as soon as you get there, it shows all their guys here. Let's go and find that Powerbox Advance. All right, we've got the quick install guide, which is what I've got printed out in front of me. We have the product manual and the setup here, observing conditions driver, all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and download each of these and get ourselves set up. All right, so everything is installed, and automatically it started up the Pocket Powerbox software, which for me is fairly familiar to the same kind of look and feel of the Pocket Powerbox, the standard Pocket Powerbox software. So hopefully it won't be that different for the Pocket Powerbox Advance. A couple things I did notice as we went through here. So first of all, that ADJ out port that I was looking at, that is what I thought it was. Looks like it's an adjustable output that you can set between 3 and 12 volts, which is great because I believe DSLR, kind of power pack, DC cables, I think those have to do something like 8 volts. But it's nice that instead of just hard coding it as this is only good for DSLRs that need that particular 8 volt out, you can actually adjust it. So if you needed another 12 volt out, great, you can do it. So pretty neat there. And then you've got your USB 3.0, the 3 to the PC, all that same kind of stuff that we're looking at. And then your extension port, the RJ12 adapter there. So looking at this, the way I'm right now, I'm just going to kind of muddle through it a little bit, just to get a first look and see kind of how intuitive some of this is. And then we can look at the manual here, or I can look at the manual for some of the extended features. But you start off just by connecting it. Let's see if the order of installing these actually worked. Connected, and do you want to let this thing access to look for updates? Sure. So there we go. So couple of neat things that did say in here, and this is, I think, a big improvement over the standard Pocket Powerbox, is that it does say that the auto do functionality is turned on by default. But the nice thing about the auto do is that if you have that environmental sensor plugged in, it's going to measure the temperature and humidity conditions, and as you start approaching the point where you might get dew, it'll start applying power to the dew channels automatically. So if you only need 20%, it'll only run at 20%, that kind of thing. Now, you can always have that turned off and set these anywhere from 0 to 255 for full for each of those channels separately. And sometimes I end up doing that. When I was using this on my SCT, I didn't bother to move over the temperature sensor, and I just maxed out that dew channel and just left it that way. But this can be, especially if you are running off of battery power, a really nice way to just have, there you go, it's stored into memory, and it lets you know that it doesn't require a PC in order to have it run. So that's nice. So looking at the rest of this, we see our current voltage meters, and I can tell, we've got our temperature, relative humidity, and the dew point on this. Now, I'm glad I'm not getting near any dew point inside the house here, but this would be really helpful out in the field there. And so it's just kind of a nice thing to look at that. And if you go through the different tabs, you put it on the environment, it'll show you that graph over time. And I've actually really liked having this when I'm out in the field periodically, just to see, am I getting close to it? Are these lines here between the temperature and dew point getting closer together? It's just a nice kind of focus or a visual to show you how things are working there. Similarly, you've got a power graph, so as you have different things come on, you can see what your power utilization is. And it has focus here. So if you have a separate focus motor and you plug it in here, then you can control the focus right from within here. Now, that can be nice. I tend to run my focus through Sequence Generator Pro automatically anyways, so typically this isn't all that important to me, but it definitely is a nice to have here, especially if you're running things a little bit more manually. And then on your configuration, you can come in and start messing around with things. So for example, there's a blue LED indicator to show that the power's on. If that blue light is not something that you'd want, or if it's too bright for the dark sky site or something that you're at, you can just click it off. And I haven't done that before, but I'm just taking a quick look. And yep, it's off. And now when I click it back on, it's on. So works well. You can set your metric. You can reboot the controller from the software here. This is nice. I think anytime you can do a reboot without having to physically unplug things, it's better. And then you have, power up on startup procedure, all outputs on, just the 12x4, the DSLR output. And it's funny, they call it DSLR in here, but they call it adjustable there. And we're all outputs off. So that's a nice kind of feature. I think I'd probably typically leave it as all the outputs are on. But I could definitely see situations where people want to power things up in a very specific order. Then you have your info. What's your current battery level? This is always going to say 55% if you're on AC power. I know that from the previous, just the normal pocket Powerbox. But some good stats here, and this can really help you if you're really having to manage that battery life. The commands exchange is helpful for just kind of watching, making sure things aren't timing out, and your usual kind of stuff there. So let's take a look here at some of the other things. So we've got on top. That's nice. So you can leave it always on top, even if you're clicking off onto other things, and probably will do that while I'm going through the manual here. Ghost window lets you kind of be able to see through it. Just a nice little UI kind of feature. Export graphs. That's kind of neat. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Oh, wow. So just immediately it'll give you little exports of those graphs. That's nice. There's a lot of times we're having, one reason or another, you need that data for something in troubleshooting. It's nice they give you just a little button to export it. And then your information tab, checking for updates, all that kind of good stuff. So the only other stuff out here, quad output on and off. So this is where you can actually shut off the power outputs that we have here. So, and you can adjust the voltage on that. So turn off that, or say turn this off. I just heard my camera fan turn off, which shows me that it's no longer connected for power there. Turn it back on, and I hear that camera go ahead and just perk right back up. But so that's the setup here, and then I'm going to take a quick look. Got to make sure I've got my camera stuff installed, and we'll double check that the camera itself is working. All right, so now we've got it open in SharpCap here, connected to that ASI 294 color camera. Obviously, everything's out of focus here because I'm just looking at stuff on the desk, but I just wanted to check and see how all this was working. All right, so we're at 20 some odd milliseconds. Definitely getting an image across just fine. My frames per second are sitting about 16, which for this camera, through SharpCap seems to be about right. Running at RAW 8. Let's crank it up to RAW 16. And I'm at about 13 frames per second, so all that seems pretty good. Let's go ahead and do some things to just check out some of the speed here. So I'm going to mess with the binning. Let's go ahead and stretch this image up a little bit so we make sure we're still getting stuff, all that kind of thing. Turn on my thermal controls, just all the normal stuff I would expect to see while I was running through this kind of thing. I'm just watching the cooler here. Target point's just at 0. And let's watch it go. So our power's running here, 23.5, 21.8. So it looks like that's cooling down in the right direction. going to go ahead and do a small capture area. Let's do 640 by 480. Zoom this in so it's not nothing. Zooming in a lot more than that. There we go. All right. I just want to make sure we're actually pointed at some stuff here. I know it doesn't look like much there, but we are getting an image. I'm just trying to check and see our frames per second. So there we go. We're running at 86 frames per second. So that's definitely, I think, running pretty well through that USB hub. The proof is in the pudding and all these things. You got to kind of connect everything up and watch it for the evening. Make sure you don't have issues going on. And then kind of only time will tell. But off the bat, works right out of the box. It's a single box. No real problems there. Everything worked just fine. Nothing kind of just came out of nowhere. The cooler, seems to be drawing power just fine and cooling the camera through, which always obviously takes a couple of minutes to cool it down to the target temperature. But I'd say overall, this is working pretty intuitively and kind of exactly the way that I would hope it would work right out of the box. So I'm going to take a look at the manual here now and look for any other hidden features that I might have missed, that kind of thing. All right, so the first couple things I've noticed on here, it's got reverse polarity detection. So if you accidentally reverse the power source polarity, the unit will cut power. This is, I think, really helpful for folks that make their own DC cords, right? I've heard a lot of times about how carefully you need to make sure that you don't accidentally cross the wires when you're putting the end of the cable on, that kind of thing. So it's nice to see that this has, protection built into it to not fry your devices out. The other kind of interesting thing, so this is full USB 3, but it's the super speed traffic. And this is kind of the interesting thing here. Super speed data transfers are not affected by the slower USB 2.0 traffic. This is something that I've run across many times on other hubs where for some reason, maybe my guide camera is running at USB 2.0 or my focuser is running at USB 2.0, and something about the pings that are coming back from it end up interfering with the image download in something like Sequence Generator Pro and causing it to kind of die out. So my normal solution to that has been don't run the camera through the hub, run it straight to the computer. So, it's nice to see this. I'm hopeful that this will mean that I can plug everything into the hub and not have to worry about it much. Then the last bit here, only 3 out of the 4 USB ports are compatible to USB 2. So it's saying this first port right here is USB 3 only and can also provide 3 amps of current for special devices. So I would assume this is probably if you're running a PC stick, that kind of thing, as your little computer onto this would be the port that it would live in. Now, with most of my devices today, I actually run 2 USB 3 and 2 USB 2 by default when it's up and really running. So this works out well for me. If your whole setup is nothing but USB 2, then maybe this is an issue. But I think most of us these days, especially at the kind of market segment that this is aimed for, because it isn't a super high-end Powerbox, it's kind of medium level. Most of us are probably running a CMOS camera that's USB 3 anyways, so this is where you would want to plug in that USB 3 for sure to leave everything else open for USB 2. Let's see what else we got. There's built-in power sensors on this, so not exactly sure, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what a smart MOSFET is capable of or what it does, but it says here, it can diagnose power consumption, provide protection against overload, over temperature, and short circuit. That's good. I want that. And same kind of thing on the do channels, right? So all of that's really good. So here's a little bit more info on that adjustable output. All right. So you can do it to 3, 5, 8, 9, or 12, and then it's stored in the memory automatically during boot. This is really nice. So you can have that kind of saved profile onto the firmware of the device. So if you go out into the field, you don't necessarily have to come in and reset it up every time.
All right, and here is the last thing that I think is pretty cool, just their optional accessories list. So battery couplers for DSLRs. I have one of these for my Canon full frame camera, and I find that they do work just fine, just like anything else. But in this case, obviously, I need to set the voltage on this to be, I believe, the 8 volt for that. Let's see. Yep, and then additional power cables specifically for different mounts. So if you're going to power your mount off of this, I tend not to do this, not because there's any issues with the box, but because I'm putting the box on top of my scope. If I don't run the telescope to it, then all my other power stays at the top of the scope. So normally I'll plug in my telescope separately, the telescope mount, so that I don't have a cable running up to everything else, and kind of lets things stay self-contained. Your power supply unit, external motor control. I guess this does pair with an external control and doesn't have one built in for theirs. However, if you're using like the focus cube from Pegasus Astro or the Celestron SCT focus motor, neither of those have an external controller, so you can just plug those directly in here via the USB and power. And then these two are the ones I find the most interesting, honestly. Dovetail brackets and the Mini Factor PC top plate. So I happen to use one of these Mini Factor PCs, and so if they're talking about having a little top plate that maybe sits on top of an Intel Nook type thing that you can then just have this sitting right on it, that would be very desirable. Maybe I don't need to Velcro it to something. I can kind of have everything all together and use very short USB cables for everything to kind of plug everything in. So I'll be kind of watching that space. And that's pretty much it from the manual side and the feature side here.
So that's kind of my first impression, kind of look over on the Pocket Powerbox Advance. So the last thing to talk about on this is the price, which is normally the single scariest part of the whole thing, right? This is something that I really like about the Pegasus Astro equipment. It feels like they're really trying to make things affordable and offer you a few different options when they can at different price points. So Pocket Powerbox itself, still for sale, still works great. Like I said, I'm probably going to have this set up on my secondary scope so that I have something that's always on it, and then this one on my primary to make life a little bit easier overall. This guy runs about $200. So that's not nothing by any means, but for essentially controlling all your power needs on the scope, as well as being able to do automatic dew control, that's a pretty compelling set of features in a $200 price point. This guy adds in that same capability, as well as having the USB 3.0 hub on it, a little bit higher quality design, and some of the other features that we went over in the kind of install and manual process there. For all that, plus this is the new guy, right? The other guy's been out for a few years. This one here runs $329. So you're looking at about $129 extra to get all this kind of stuff on here. So is that worth it to you? You can get a USB 3.0 hub, a generic one, for whatever it is, $20-$30, right? Maybe as a powered hub. However, I do believe from what I've read on this and the expectation that this is actually a much higher grade USB 3.0 hub, and those tend to run anywhere between about $80 and $100 or more for some of these quote industrial grade hubs. So hopefully this is a good middle ground between kind of buying that extra equipment. And for me, I think that and kind of the extra fit and finish on it, updated software, and all that kind of stuff, and having it all in one box, to me sounds like a pretty good deal on the price front. I ran this for about 10 minutes, running my computer at 85 frames per second, coming across with the heater on, all that kind of stuff. Didn't drop any frames, everything ran through smoothly, that kind of stuff. So I think speed-wise, this is working just fine. We'll just have to I'll have to play around with it in the field to see if I have any issues there. But if this is like my other equipment that I've gotten from Pegasus, which includes the original Pocket Powerbox, as well as the focus cubes, where I've had both the version 1 of the focus cube and the version 2. Between all of those, I've always enjoyed all the products they have, and I think for what you're getting out of them in comparison to other things on the market, their pricing is really competitive. You know, they tend to be, I very rarely see them as more expensive than a lot of the other solutions that are out there. And in my opinion, they also tend to be more compact, a little bit, it seems to be a little bit more well built, or at least a little bit more well thought out in terms of the design. First of all, I do like the blue. I think it's a nice point of branding to have that same kind of blue on everything. You know, you can't undersell the value of marketing on these things, right? But when I talk about design for this, right, the package is small, right? It's lightweight, it's durable, and so it's meant to be something that can very easily sit in on your equipment without taking up a lot of weight. Every piece of hardware that I've gotten from Pegasus typically is meant to add as little mass onto everything that you've got as possible, and I do appreciate that. I'm going to recommend this one. I was probably going to recommend it before I started the video, but I wanted to show you guys kind of how this all worked, what it looked like, what it did for you. You know, but so far I'm not disappointed in this. Just like I did on my Eagle one, if I run into any real problems down the line here that cause me to rethink this, you know, I'll definitely put an update video out there on what's going on. But I have a feeling this one's going to be pretty good. So that's it for this time. And until next time, I wish everybody clear skies. Thanks.